If you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. And if your image of God doesn't measure up with Jesus, you need a new image of God, because Jesus is the exact image of what God is like.
We believe that Jesus is the ultimate solution. Our belief is that Jesus is the antidote. He is the Savior. He is the solution. He is the hero. He is the big idea.
Jesus shows up on the scene and he lets everybody know, I am the bread of life. You need to know I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the vine. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. I am God, is what he was saying.
Well, good morning. Who could believe in here that in the next few moments God could plant a seed in you that would produce a great harvest? Anybody willing to believe that? Might as well, you're here. You've come to church, you come to the place where we believe that we get to accentuate and emphasize the most important person in the world and the person that has given his life for you. And I am super excited, been super excited to be able to share with you today. And in Preacher Talk, that's code for this could be a very long sermon. Right? So, but I am just super excited about downloading what God has given me. But before I do, I would just wanted to, if you haven't seen Major Move and the progress that's happened within the past week, the electrical is stubbed up, the plumbing is stubbed up. There was a large driveway that was poured. It's beautiful. It's wide. It's going to have a lot of space to leave the property and enter the property. It's got some great contours to it. I've never been excited about just looking at concrete and going, that's beautiful. That is just beautiful. But other good news is that a couple months ago in February, I shared with you just the status of where we are in raising the $1.5 million. And I told you, I was able to say we're 81% of the way there, and we celebrated that. That's because that's great. But today, I get to tell you that we are 86% of the way to our goal. 86% of the way. We only have $207,000 left. And you say, only? Yeah, it really isn't only when you look at you've been on this journey to raise $1.5 million. So we're there, and it's great. Every single week now we get to see little bits of progress leading towards our major move. For stories yet to be told. All right, well, last week we began the series called Jesus, which I think is just an incredible title for a series. I think it's just fitting. And what we're doing is we're following Jesus around, kind of creeping on Jesus, like you're stalking Jesus. Not so much seeing where he's going. We're trying to see what he does as he goes. Trying to see, how's he interacting with people? We know he's going to Jerusalem or Capernaum, but on the way there's some interactions. What's he doing with those interactions while he's trying to get somewhere? Or what's the work he's doing while he's going to work? This series has been influenced by a video called Living Godspeed. I hope you were able to slow down enough this week to watch it. Living Godspeed. I've watched this video 8 times, a minimum of 8 times that I counted. This past week, Monday, I watched it again with my family. Pull our family together in the living room. We watched it together. Last night, I watched it with my small group. If you meet in your small group, you guys may want to just postpone the study for the week and just watch this video. Because every time I sit and watch this, there is something inside of me that goes, that's the way to live. That's how God has designed the pace of life to be. That's what he wants life to be like. Because what you have is you have a guy named Matt Canlis. He graduates seminary. But yet he realizes, man, I am running through life. And as I'm running through life, I'm missing a lot of life. I'm sure we've all felt like that way. I'm going so fast. I'm not living. I'm not making the relationships that I want. So he met with Eugene Peterson. And he said, what advice would you give me? Eugene told him, find a fishbowl to serve in. Find a place to live where you can know people and the people can really know you. We're not bouncing around places, a place where your roots can go really deep with people. Find that place. He said, where could I go to do that? He said, you're probably going to have to move out of America. He said, no, I ain't doing that. I'm not doing that. But as he did it, because he had to move to Scotland to further his studies, He applied for a job there in Scotland as an associate pastor. And the first day on the job, he knocked on the door of his pastor and said, "Where's my office?" And the pastor said, "Your office?" He said, "Yes, where's my office?" He took him outside, and he pointed down the road to a neighborhood. He said, "Your office, that's your office. Start walking." And what the pastor was reminding the young seminarian about was that it's always about people. God's work is always about people. It will always will be about people. It's been that way. So you get walking. And so now the rest of the video chronicles how Matt has learned through interactions with people, different types of people, how to slow down and to really listen to people. Not just to think about what you're going to say next or what you have to do next, but really look someone in the eye and just hear what they're saying and even hear what they're not saying. And to be present in the moment and to allow wisdom to lead the way and to teach you, to be slow enough and have a pace about the day, a cadence about the day, you could really be a learner. And it's something that I think that, we're all after. Because one thing that I know as I interact with people is that we're not a whole lot, we have more things in common than we have than different. We experience the same emotions, have fears, and passions, and desires, and anxieties. And one thing that I know that we all share together is that we all want to know that our life is purposeful. It bugs us to think we're just here, we're gone, and nothing ever happened. But are we significant? Why am I here? What is my purpose on this earth? And for Christ's followers, we look to Jesus for that meaning. And we should. But sometimes we get distracted and we also look to ourselves for that meaning or to make that meaning. And this is how we usually make our meaning. We say, I want purpose. I want to feel like I'm significant. So I have to be productive. And productivity makes us run a fast race because we think we have to get things done to feel productive. And if we're not doing things and we're not advancing, then we're not significant. So we get in the trap of producing just so that we can feel accomplished. But Thomas Kelly, he said, over the margins of life comes a whisper. Every now and then there's a faint call, a premonition of richer living, which we know we are passing by. Strained by the very mad pace of our daily outer burdens, we are further strained by an inward uneasiness because we have hints. We have hints that there is a way of life vastly richer and deeper than all this hurried existence. It's a life of unhurried serenity, of peace, and of power. So as we look to Jesus, we're not watching Jesus get to or arrive at the destination. We're trying to see his cadence and his pace while he's in between. Like while you're going to school, while you're trying to get the degree, while you're trying to make the sale, while you're running your errands, while you're trying to be productive, God is wanting to be productive in you while you're trying to be productive. But if we're always seeking to knock the list out and be productive, you miss so many different interactions to be able to connect with people. And God may be saying, this is really the production of your day. So we looked at a scripture where Jesus is talking and praying. It's in John 17:4. And Jesus tells his Father, I glorified you, which would be an incredible thing to be able to say at the end of your life. I glorified you. I brought you weight and honor on earth. And then he describes how he did it. Having accomplished the work that you've given me to do. I did what you've asked me to do. Eugene Peterson says, I brought you glory by completing even to the last detail. And there we go. We could easily get this confused and say, that's it, Jesus. Knock it out. Knock the things to do list out. Be ambitious like you are. Get it done. Like yesterday, I had a list. I got up, wrote a list on a Saturday, just 8 things to do. I got about 6 of the 8 things to do. I felt pretty accomplished last night. I was pretty satisfied because you get a large part of your list done, you feel good about yourself. But here's the question. What if God measured productivity differently? What if you could get all your things to do list and still miss exactly what he wanted you to do while you were trying to get it done? Would you say that you would be productive? It's just not about getting something done. It's about how we go about doing it. Because a lot of life happens when we're trying to get somewhere. If you're not aware at the moment that God is trying to use you as you're trying to get somewhere, there's a lot of space in those moments between point A and point B. But if we're so concerned about getting to point B that we miss the space, then really we're just wasting a lot of life and a lot of opportunities for God to use us to impact people for his kingdom. There's a lot of wisdom that we don't learn. Many of the stories about Jesus in the four Gospels are about what he does while he's on the way. You've got chapters that open up when Jesus crossed to the other side. He's moving. When Jesus was on his way to the synagogue. When Jesus was in the grain field. When he was walking beside the Sea of Galilee. When Jesus was on the mountain. When Jesus was at Caesarea Philippi. When he was on his way to Jerusalem. Jesus is walking. He's clocking a lot of miles. And Mark talks about this journey, one of these journeys that he was on. 8:27, and Mark says, and Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, everybody say on the way. On the way, not there, he's not at Caesarea Philippi, but on the way, he asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? And if we would continue reading that chapter, it would go on for 10 more verses talking about the conversation or the work that he did while he was trying to get to work. While he was trying to get to Caesarea Philippi. It's almost like God said, okay, here's the Bible. It's the inspired word of God. And I'm going to tell you that here's his itinerary. He's trying to get to Caesarea Philippi, but we're going to spend 10 verses talking about his journey and not even talk about his destination. And that's what God chose to put in the book that would direct us. I mean, the only transition that happens after 10 verses, it says, and after 6 days, Jesus treks up a mountain. It doesn't even talk about what happens at Caesarea Philippi. It just says, while he's there, after 6 days of being there, he goes up a mountain. So there's a destination, there's something to do, but the text focuses on what happens on the journey. So we go to Mark 10:17. It says, and as he was setting out on his journey, a man ran up to him, knelt before him, and asked him, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? But it says, as he was setting out on his journey. And then you have in that chapter 15 verses that go on from that moment on, only explaining the interaction that Jesus has on the way he's getting to the journey. It's not talking about the journey. So it goes from 15 all the way to verse 32. And then it says, and they were on the road going up to Jerusalem. Then there's 12 verses now that talk about the work that's happening while they're on their way. So verse 46 says, and they came to Jericho. And as he was leaving Jericho, it's like he came to Jericho, now he's leaving Jericho. What's going on in Jericho? And Mark saying, who cares? The action is on the journey right now. And as he's leaving Jericho with his disciples in a great crowd, Bartimaeus, which is a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And again, Mark is emphasizing the work that Jesus is going to do while traveling to get somewhere. I just wonder how many blind Bartimaeuses I pass up a day. Because I'm trying to get somewhere. I'm trying to get a things to do list done so I can do what I want to do. And yet there are people along the way that God said the reason why, it's like, remember last week I mentioned we use people to help us get things accomplished. Jesus used things and events just for the purpose that he could connect with people. And what if God was saying, the reason I was wanting you to do this things to do list or get this thing done or run this errand was so that you would meet this person at this location, but because you were so busy, you missed the opportunity. You're not being perceptive to the moment or perceptive or climbing up high enough to see from a different angle than what we see, but actually going up and climbing and looking down from maybe a God perspective to say, oh, because, sometimes in retrospect, we can look back over things and we say, oh, that's how you were working. Here's why it's important. Because a lot of life happens while we're trying to be productive. And we can have a tendency to pass up these opportunities, not even see the opportunities, not even hear that the person needs something because we're We're so bent on trying to get somewhere to get something done. We'll pass up a conversation. We'll pass up, won't even notice that there's a scared coworker, an anxious coworker, someone struggling in their home, a neighbor that is stressed out. Because we tend to think that completing a list or a task, checking off something, is being productive. But sometimes the golden opportunity lies between point A and point B, just not at getting point B. For Jesus, his work wasn't only getting somewhere. It was in the process. And sometimes the most memorable thing that you'll remember about a day isn't so much the destination, but what happened on the journey. I do this with vacations. I think about some of the vacations that my family's been able to take. Sometimes I won't even think about the destination. The story that we may talk about would be the trip up there. You guys remember when we were in the car and this happened? You remember when we were out to eat and we stopped on the side of the road and this happened? We're going like, we remember the journey. This past year we went to Branson. My in-laws took us to Branson. And by the way, if you ever want to feel young, just go to Branson. It's where everybody that's retired vacations. And, you got some great memories. Great shows and great times. The other day, I had synced my phone up to our TV, and the family was in the room, and I was just going through my photos. We were looking at the photo, laughing. You know how you do. Just look at the photos. And we got to the part of Branson. You know what the photo got the most talks? Wasn't in Branson. It was actually probably about an hour away from here. That was the photo. Because we stopped at a place to eat at a small country town at probably 11:30 at night, and it was one of two fast food joints that was open, and the whole town was there. And we were so famished. Us as Americans get famished really quick. We couldn't go on another moment, so we had to eat, and so we just joined the whole town and entered the dirtiest restaurant I've ever been in. Ate the worst food I've ever eaten. Their fountain drinks weren't working. We waited for a long time to get our food. But you know what we talk about when we talk about the Branson vacation? Remember when we stopped at Burger King and so-and-so? You remember that? It's like, yes, that was so much fun. I'm thinking we didn't, my in-laws, they spent $2,000. We should be talking about Branson. You're talking about Burger King. But sometimes it's the things along the way that really make the difference. And we sometimes just want to rush through things like mundane tasks, right? We say, man, I just need to knock this list out so I can get to this. I just want to say, could you step back and look at what we are doing? Is we're saying, I'm going to speed through life, and I'm going to speed through interactions so I can get to do what I want to do, what I think I need to do. But what if in those moments is that golden opportunity that God wants to use you? And we're speeding through it. Maybe it's a routine thing, but maybe it's not routine to God. So I hope that this series will breathe purpose into your life. Like every moment, every interaction of your life. In particular, when I was first writing this, I was thinking about careers where people enter for right reasons and humanitarian reasons and reasons to make a difference, but by the time they retire, they're burned out. And there were three fields that came to my mind. One was education, that teachers choose education because they want to make a difference in a child's life. That's why they choose that. They don't choose it for the money, do they? People in healthcare choose healthcare because they want to make a difference in people's life. They want to be there in people's time of need. People in social services like social work or counseling choose those things because they want to be with clients and they want to help people access resources that could help them be better in life. But it's not uncommon if you talk to an educator that's been in it 10 to 15 years to say, I just don't like my job anymore. I love getting a paycheck, I don't like who I have to work with or the conditions I have to work in. Because sometimes the classroom size is very large. Sometimes the parents, don't want to participate in the education of the children. Sometimes the principals, the management, the leadership's not there. Sometimes you get tired of teaching to test. You want to just teach. And they say, I just don't have the joy in that. I'm going, here's what I want to say to you today. Don't let these things rob you of purpose within your career. Go back to the intention that you got into the career, that you chose the field that you did, and go back and make a difference in kids' life. Go back and make a difference in patients' life. Go back and make a difference in the client's life. Yeah, you may have to endure certain things, but it's worth enduring it so you can make the difference. And it's way more, we know this, it's way more than a paycheck. Abraham Heschel says there's a unique kind of transparency about things and about events. There's a unique way that we can see through things, is what he's saying. The world is seen through, and no veil can conceal God completely. So the pious man is ever alert to see behind the appearance of things, that there's a trace of the divine. And thus his attitude towards life is one of, now how would you like to wake up and live each day with an expectant reverence? That any moment in this day, any conversation, yes, this may be a business conversation. Yes, I may be working with a patient. I may be making a sale. I may be hanging out with the kids in the car and bringing them on the commute. But this expectant reverence is saying God could show up any moment and things would be different. And that God would use you in the hospital room, in the boardroom, in the car. And you're not even aware of it. But you're expectant that God's around and He is about to do His best work in you. Why not? Why couldn't we believe that a transcendent and immanent God would not want to do His amazing work in you, even in routine things? Now, I'm not telling you, and I mentioned this last week, I'm not telling you that every single interaction is going to be fireworks and people are going to be getting saved when you talk to them and opening up. I'm not saying that. This past week, I was outside of a cafe. It's where I study downtown. They have a patio, so I went out in the patio. It's a little waterfall. I was just reading a book, studying. No one else is, it's not a highly trafficked area. I'm sitting there reading a book, and some guy runs out of the cafe. He's got a bandana on his face. And he says, I can't touch her, I will not defile the marriage. Oh, what is going on? He comes over, he sits next to me on the patio. I'm not going to touch her, I can't do that with a married woman. I'm like, okay, as I'm trying to reflect on what I'm supposed to be doing here, God, you brought me to this moment, what can I do? I'm like, I'm glad you don't. You shouldn't do that. He's like, did you married to her? So this lady was in the cafe. Obviously, she was very attractive. And he had to run out of there like Joseph ran. And he ran out, speaking out of his mouth what was in his head. I can't touch her. It's like, hey, you don't have to say everything you think. And so all of a sudden, he just kept on, and then all of a sudden, in a flash, he's gone. And I'm still going, what just happened? This guy with a bandana runs out of the cafe, yelling he's not going to mess with the lady. It's like, wow. I'm not telling you every interaction. I'm like saying every interaction. But if we come that God could use us, and I was at that moment saying, God, what in the world would you want to be doing right now? And look, let me take a time out because I can go a little longer in this service. Figure that out. Kenny Vaughn's here. Kenny Vaughn spoke on the stage about love, and Kenny's here. And I've been around Kenny long enough to know he does something that I would love to be able to do. And that is when he sees people and they're just having a tough day, or he wants to speak encouragement to them, since he has access to his product, Shields of Strength, he always carries Shields of Strength around in his truck, and he gives them away all the time. So if you ever want a Shields of Strength and you're around Kitty, just ask that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Go down to the shop and buy one. I always thought, man, I want something to give. I don't have anything to give. I mean, if I had a product to give people and I saw that they were sad or at the gas station or were just having a bad day, that would be incredible. I don't have anything to give. I mean, what am I going to do? Like, hey, you want my sock? Right? No. Get a weirdo. Get up. So my wife calls me Friday night. I'm on the way home, and she's on the way coming home. She said, I just got to tell you this, because the other day she was at Kirkland's, and she was checking out. And while she was checking out, to a cashier that was extremely nice to her, there was a guy that stood behind my wife and just really was very rude to the cashier. And I was like, how is this happening? My wife felt really, really bad for the lady. So Friday, she decided to go back to Kirkland's with a gift, with just some M&Ms in a little cup or something, just to give the lady and just say, hey, you're doing a great job. And I was like, man, I don't have anything to give. Just got a sock. And I had to pick up my daughter here at the church, and she had a friend. We always like go to Starbucks before we go home, and we're sitting in Starbucks just hanging out, chatting. And I thought, I'm going to buy it. And I haven't done this yet, but I'm just trying to give you ideas of how you can turn common interactions. And it's hopefully I'll share a story with you one day. But I said, I can buy 3 $5 gift cards and carry it around with me. If I'm at a restaurant and I see someone that comes to wait something, they're having a bad day, it's just, hey, just want to give you this. I know it's weird. I'm just looking for ways. I'm trying to give you ways that you could take an ordinary moment and turn it into a God opportunity to speak life like Jesus did all the time when he was on the way to places. Because here's the biggest obstacle that we have. It's the pace of production for us. The pace of production. For us to be productive, we feel like we have to increase the pace. Be super busy, be super focused. But when we're like that, super busy and focused, then we tend to miss certain things in the process, like not being fully present in the conversation, thinking ahead of the conversation, not hearing what's being said, thinking about what we need to do, what we need to get done so that we can be productive. Sometimes we say yes to way too many things. So the day is like we're going super busy, because we've said yes to everything. And for our family, we've learned we say no to more things than we say yes to, so that we can keep a sustainable life in a pace where we can hear God and we can sit down and have meals with our family. And there's margin so that if you need something, it's a good possibility we could come alongside you and help. It's like this. If you live 15 minutes away from here, and this was your place of employment, and you had to be here at 8 o'clock, if you left at 7:45 in the morning, you don't have any room for anything to go wrong. You get in the car and it doesn't have gas, you don't have time to stop. You're going to be angry. It's going to affect your emotions. You don't have time to stop for a flat tire. You don't have time to stop if you see someone stopped alongside the road, because you got to be there. There's no margin. And when we fill our life so full and say yes to everything that we think we have to get our child into, every meeting that we're invited to, every party, every graduation, everything, so that it packs our schedule even further and it makes us run, then we're not able to look someone in the eye and not only hear what they're saying, but hear what they're not saying. You know why? But here, it's not because we're mean or we're bad people. Look here. It's because we think production is about getting things accomplished. And in Jesus' eyes, he says it's not only about getting there, it's the process of getting there. What if you get there and you pass up all of these opportunities to speak life into people? Because it's always been about people. It will always be about people. God gave his best for people only, not things. And he will always use things to connect you to people so that he can speak his life through you. But if we're rushing and racing, We don't even see people. And this is kind of like our life. There's a book I just recently read called TechWise. Talks about trying to wrestle with this whole idea of screen time and phones and all this stuff with children and raising up children and how to manage that wisely. And in it cited a study. And the study said that it takes us 7 minutes before we'll ever we have the opportunity to get into kind of like deep conversation with somebody. So if me and my children get in the car, it'll take 7 minutes of small talk to get to the big talk, or to an emotion, or to something that's really meaningful. But if we're always racing, we don't even have 7 minutes to hold a conversation to get to what's meaningful. We understand that because a lot of us don't even feel like we ever get heard, do we? I just flip it and say, are we listening? Are we hearing? Are we providing, someone to talk? We look at this story between Mary and Martha. Let's read it in Luke 10:38. It says, now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. A woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha's distracted with much serving. She was really busy. She went up to him and she said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you're anxious and you're troubled about many things. But there's one thing that's necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. And here's what I want you to see. This is a normal situation. This is a mundane task. This is no fireworks, heroics. This is just a meal that you invite someone into your home. And there is a list that is driving Martha crazy because the list isn't getting done. And Martha and Jesus is not helping her. And she's upset because she thinks production is something other than what her sister thinks. And what do you have Mary doing? Mary is kneeling, sitting at Jesus' feet. And in the Bible, when you see people sitting at Jesus' feet or hearing about that, in Acts it says, and they sold the money and laid the money at the apostles' feet, which means now the money used to be mine. I'm putting it at your feet, meaning it is no longer mine, it's yours. And Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, saying, I am not my own. I'm not my own. I'm perceiving this moment right now that really what production really is, what productivity really is not so much in the kitchen making a meal, but it is sitting at your feet saying, I am under your authority. In Psalms it says, and the Lord said to my Lord, I will make your enemies sit on my right hand until I make your enemies my footstool, your footstool, meaning your enemies will come under your authority. Sitting at your feet, meaning coming under the authority. And anytime here Mary is, and within your day, you could perceive that, no, I'm not going to be in the kitchen. I'm not going to be doing all this busy stuff, even though we have to do that stuff. But at the same moment, have the mindset of Mary, to have an expectant reverence that God's in the house. God's everywhere. God's with you now. God's in the moment, in that he could do his best work in and through you. Right then, you are at his feet saying, I am not my own. I serve you. I want to know that you are in the house and that you're in the room. And that could happen to every single one of us in this room. And what an amazing thing would happen in Southeast Texas if every one of us would go out with an expectant reverence that God would show up and do his best work in you. You talk about purpose. Every week I get an email from our care department here, our pastoral care. Goes through the list of those in the hospital and those who've lost loved ones and those who's given birth and things like that. This past week I received an email. I want to read it to you. It's talking about one of our ladies, dear ladies that attend Praise. She hasn't been back since the storm. She lived in Hidden Valley. Her name's Nell Groen. Nell's about 80 years old. She's a widow. Her health was declining right before the hurricane. Water filled her house. They had to rescue her. I haven't seen her since. I haven't seen her. We've talked to her on the phone. And so, our guys call call her and talk to her. She'll call and talk to us. And one thing you need to know about Nell is if you're going to get on the phone with Nell, you need to have a few minutes. Because Nell's going to tell you everything that happened since the last phone call. And she's going to tell you every detail. And she may even tell it to you twice. So sometimes when we get a phone call, hey, you need to call Nell, we're thinking, well, I just keep that for a road trip. And it's kind of the talk here. You talk to Nell. I want you to hear the description that was written to me about Nell Gron. This is from Jana Daigle. Checking on Nell regularly. She's living in Sour Lake. She's going to church with her son. I called her on 417. She retold the story of the storm. She said it was very traumatic. Talked about waking up to the water and how she got out. Been in her new apartment since January. Floors are laminate. She has all new fixtures. 6-drawer dresser with a mirror. Opal table with 6 chairs. On the table is insure and envelopes. Every Friday, Betty, her sister-in-law of 90 years old, drives her to the beauty shop to get her hair done. They eat at Mama Fesca's. She has catfish on Fridays. It's broiled on a bed of rice with coleslaw, buttered bread for $10. It includes your drink and dessert. Her son Paul picks her up for the Apostolic Lighthouse Church every Sunday. She wears gray pants. She has a silver wraparound walker. She has an eye doctor appointment on the 23rd of April at 9:30 a.m. Vanjie is going to pick her up. She has occupational therapy. Her right hand has nerve damage. They come twice a week. Tomorrow, which is Wednesday, is her last visit. Monday through Thursday, she gets a meal from the nutrition center. Nothing is too salty. It is good. Again, never too salty. And then Jana writes, love her attention to detail. If it is important to her to share, I felt it was important for me to remember so I could ask her about it. That's the life I want to live. That's the type of motivation I want to have for people. That's the type of information Jesus had. That's how Jesus did it in between getting somewhere. It was always about people. And he didn't let production be what we think production is. We want to get things done. It was all about the connection, speaking life into people. Amen.